Wonderful. Good morning, beautifuls. This video is to give a brief overview of what it is that we bring when we bring Nemeton Wellness Collective to an event to do and be the community wellness point for a period of time. I want to give you a little bit of background about myself. Some of you may know me at events, some of you may have heard about me or seen me on social media, and a bit of my background is I have been playing in these realms since about 2009, taking this to many different events, different iterations, different experiences. And a lot of my training and backgrounds that inspired me into this process was that years ago I was an EMT paramedic. I was a firefighter. I went through a bachelor's program with nursing. I took courses with Seven Song, with the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine. And I have been teaching herbal medicine making and usage and those holistic wellness pieces for about 13 years or so. And it was also about 13 years ago or so that I started my own inner cartography experiment, so human design, gene keys, and practicing walking in those paths. And there's some secondary trainings that I have had involving incident command training, advanced cardiac life support, pediatric life support, basic trauma support. I worked as a clinical EMT instructor for a number of years and did different levels of tutoring with different sciences involved while I was in college. So a lot of my joy and delight in wellness comes from many years of having dived really deep into very different kinds of quadrants of things. And when I come and bring that to an event, I'm bringing those kinds of considerations that span the realm from looking at things from an emergency basis, looking at things from a holistic, where we're taking in the whole person or the whole of a community or the whole of what the event is trying to do, and creating a support structure for all of that. All right, so that's about me. I want to talk a little bit about Nemeton. Nemeton is a New York State nonprofit entity. We were founded in 2011 and we became established in 2020. We are a spiritual-based human earth sanctuary and learning community. And our mission is to promote better relationships between humans and the world around us through the practices and holistic living. And we do that through a number of different means, whether that's living ecologically with the land, living through permaculture practices, working with inner cartography amongst the humans, and then in general, community wellness. We do a lot of supporting education through the Alchemy of the Seasons School, and we provide wellness and sanctuary spaces when we're at events, and we specifically focus on local as well as far-reaching events. Nemeton Wellness Collective is one of the 4 branches of service in our nonprofit, and community wellness is one of several offerings inside of that branch. So just to kind of give you an orient about where it's all coming from. Okay, so into our wellness model, right? Nemeton Wellness Collective community wellness model, vision, and mission is one of being pillars for community, where we can offer support by sharing our wisdoms, trainings, lessons, experiences, to aid in the sovereignty, empowerment, and agency of individuals and the collective at events and community gatherings. We use a combined model of a holistic 3-point trajectory perspective. Right? We're looking through prevention, treatment, and support, which is kind of a modern model that I've been infusing inside of holistic models. Right? So we look at how can we prevent things from happening, which brings with it a need to be aware of what has been the patterns in the past. Right? So you'll hear me talk a little bit later about what are some of the things that we commonly experience when we're supporting events. I've been working events now for over 12 years, 13 years, the numbers escape me. And that's anywhere from 2 to 5 events per year. And so as I looked back through that and gathered the data, the statistical data, and looking at the percentages of the things we experience, we then know how to plan for prevention, right? Oftentimes prevention is wrapped up in education. It's wrapped up in providing encouragement for, let's say, hydration before someone gets dehydrated, and now it becomes a problem where that person can't do the thing that they were doing, or they need to take downtime and step away from their project. All right, so prevention is so that we don't have a problem. We focus a lot of our attention on that piece of things. Right, and then there's the other pieces of it, the treatment and the support. So that's providing treatment. It's providing supports for when things do happen, right? Our mission is to support communities that are bent on creating a new world where equality, freedom, integrity, support, sustainability, and responsibility are their mission, and where they have active practices of seeking consistent, never-ending growth. We seek to meet individuals where they are and see where we could be supportive and offer from our experience while supporting the decisions of the individual and the well-being of the event. So we are perpetually straddling many different spheres of trying to provide a support that considers the event, the community, and the individuals. Right? And those are different things, because the goals and the needs of an individual may not necessarily line up with an event, may not necessarily line up with a community. An event's goals or a community's goals might not line up with an individual. And so we're looking to find that balance point between sometimes at odds points of views. So we do a lot of time, we spend a lot of time sorting out where we are going to be a good fit for an event, and where an event is a good fit for us. Once we understand what the event is looking for, and we commit to attending, right? So we want to know what the event is looking for before we commit to the thing. We make choices very on purpose and strategically as we go. And when we do commit to attending, we show up with the provisions for hydration, support, and encouragement, an empowered self-care and first aid station with herbal and holistic supports, as well as modern supports. We bring inner cartography mapping, we bring community wellness discussion spaces, team building, sanctuary creation, and there's always a vast array of tools that we bring as well. And we also bring flexible processes and protocols that can be tapped into. All of this supports the creation and maintenance of a strong, energetic container for people to play in for the event. Our goal is to help the events and the communities and the individuals learn how to create sustainability for themselves inside the event. What we'd really love is that we work with you for a couple of years and then you don't need us because you've tapped into your own resources inside of your event. And if you continue to want our support, then that's awesome as well. All right. I'm just going to touch briefly on this point around a big part of our focus is that we support a trifecta of individual wellness, community wellness, and event wellness. That's the way we like to play. That's the way I like to play. And the way I've kind of looked at it is event wellness from the perspective of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and service, right? And so physically that's like looking at what are the outcomes that we want, where we get to manage the crises that do happen, where we minimize legal involvement, right? So we do things according to how they need them to be, where the flow gets to go on, the show gets to go on, right? The event doesn't become halted by something. Mentally might look at there's no divisions that get established, meaning we have the ability to have an easeful communication between everybody. Emotionally, we look at the modalities involved in what gets created with the reputation of an event, right? So emotionally, how do people feel about the event? And a lot of that happens when you're at the event and you're inside of the experience, and so being able to kind of compost those experiences on site. Spiritually, energetically, we're looking at the egregoric health, the health of the whole, how the event and the space feels to the attendees on the majority level. On the service side for event wellness is looking at what services get provided to the community in a safe and growth supported way with consideration for those who are in service. right? And I'm not going to go through all of them. Just know that there is a physical, mental, emotional service component for the community wellness. There's a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual service component for the individual's wellness. And so we're always straddling those 3 points of reference that each have 5 considerations with it. So there's a lot of layers and nuances inside of that process. So here's a little bit of a flow of how we offer our mission. Before we agree to attend and support an event, we ask a lot of deep questions. We listen for the bottom lines. We review aerial maps of the space. We consider what's possible before we make an agreement. This helps us assess needs and potential hazards and possible flows and win-win-wins, right? How is this going to work for all of us? We have an event intake form where you can see a lot of the different kinds of questions. Some of the things we specifically look at are, what is the situation on site? Some of the practical pieces are like water and toileting and electrical access. What's it look like to transport items on site? What kind of equipment are we hoofing it? Is there golf carts? Are there wagons? Is there help? Are we working on our own? What does it look like if we have to transport a patient through an event to get to EMS? And that happens, right? Sometimes you can experience someone who, sprained an ankle and can't walk, or they broke something, or they had a seizure, or they're in the middle of something that is a crisis and they cannot move. What's the protocol for that, right? Emergency vehicle access, like how can EMS show up at an event to pick up someone that we tried to move through an event? So there's a lot of deep, poignant questions that I go slow and thoroughly with when I'm interviewing an event to see if we can work well together. Because there's nothing worse than showing up to an event and not being able to do the thing that you're there to do. We look to understand the terrain of the event. For example, lots of slopes can mean sprained ankles. Long, thin events might mean sore joints and dehydration from pounding the turf, right? We look at determining the traffic flow and potential danger zones, right? Hydration concerns, burns, increased risk for injury. Is there a swimming hole nearby? And we also look for what are the standing emergency protocols for the event. Do they have anything in place? How do those get activated? What is the chain of command? What do we need to be aware of? Where might the event need support in case of those things happening? We also look really clearly at what is the event's bottom lines and nope walls, right? So we know if, when, as shit hits the fan, because it does, that we get to plan for it, right? And at any point in time, those questions that we ask, we're also able to offer in insights, things we've experienced in other places, helping to write or create these things as well. We also look for the ability to give 5 to 15 minutes of opening circle conversation at the event that we're bringing this to. This is about what we're bringing for that event. This is how to connect with us, how to come up and ask for what you need, what they might experience, and any dangers they might want to be aware of before they proceed with the event. This helps to bring us all on the same page. It helps get us into a connection with each other and to have a deep comfortability with asking for help. And they also get to see eyes on the wellness collective team to know who to go to when they have a problem. There's a document here called Community Wellness Intro Letter, and in this is a link to having a sneak peek of what it is that we like to share during that community circle time. Preparation. So we do, in our packing and preparation, we're considering the community, the individuals, as well as some of the potential mass emergency needs. Right? We bring over 160 different herbal and holistic medicines, each in their own categories of treatments and ammo cases. Modern medical setup that meets a basic first aid requirement station that you might hire an EMT or a first aid service for your event. We bring laminated signs that remind people to check for ticks and how to care for poison ivy exposure and other various signage that helps orient a person to the various stations that are available in the community wellness space. And we plan ahead for needs such as water and hydration support, resting, being ill or sick, or needing someplace quiet to lay down or have a deep conversation. And here's the place where we talk about some of the cases, types of cases that we've supported. throughout our experiences in doing this. Emotional upset is a thing that people often come to the wellness space for. Um, and that can be anywhere from 20 to 50 cases, generally 100% of the time. People go through uh, internal tumultuousness when they are inside of community and transformational spaces. Yay, people are having an emotional experience. Sometimes they don't know how to handle it. And so they can come and ask for support in that process. And some of the things that we bring and the practices that we offer, the spaces that we create, can give them the ability to settle in and allow that experience to integrate into their nervous system. We see a lot of poison ivy. If it's on site, if poison ivy is on the site that the event is being held at, then it ends up being anywhere from like 5 to 25 cases 95% of the time. People in poison ivy, they find each other. And so we have a process for that. There's a wash station that we create and different treatments. We were once at an event where over 100 people came down with poison ivy within 24 hours, and it almost became an event-wide emergency. And we were able to slow that from being an emergency to being something that was like more annoying than it really being an issue. Foot wounds, very, very common, especially if it's an outdoor event. Frequent. GI upset, women's moons, bladder infections, migraines and headaches, right? These can range from anywhere from, 2 to 5 at an event all the way on up to higher numbers, 20, 25, 30. People coming in with pre-existing injuries, right? They, came in with something and they need, continuous tending, or they came in with something and it got worse while they were there. Dog bites. Dog bites are a thing that happens. If there's dogs on site, dog bites are often very prevalent because dogs can get really spun out being around so many other dogs, so many other kids, not having their own personal space. That's not to say that dogs are bad at events in any way whatsoever. I love dogs, have one myself, and it happens. Tick bites. Tick bites are very common. Syncopal episodes. So when I say syncope or syncopal, that's fainting. That's, passing out. That's someone unconscious on the ground. And that can be from a lot of different causes. It can be from spiritual awakenings. It can be an emergency event. And generally speaking, it's not an emergency event. And it becomes something that is startling to the people around them because they don't know that it's not an emergency. We see a lot of allergies, insect bites, of course, sprained joints, respiratory complaints, and occasionally overdoses with alteratives, whether that's from drugs or from plant medicines and people having an off experience. And then also physical altercations. And physical altercations can come from triggered emotional states as well as new layers of awakenings that cause the nervous system to behave erratically, right? And they may not necessarily be in control of their limbs or how they're moving, and still it can have an impact on the people around them. So that's kind of a general overview of some of the major things that we see at events that keep us pretty busy. And when I'm working with an event, we keep track of the different experiences that happen. We do what's called a run sheet, same thing I would do when I was running as a paramedic on a rig. Was we keep track of the runs that we make or the calls that come in or the people that come in and needing help. And so that's part of how I have this statistical data, so I've been keeping track of it for the past decade. The team and timing and arrival. So we generally work best in teams of 3 to 5 people. I have often worked events alone, and it has often been difficult to be able to be in all the places that I need to be simultaneously. So these days I am most happy to be working inside of a group of people. 2 can work. 2 is still stressful, especially when there are multiple pieces of things that are happening. So 3 is kind of the minimum that I would like to work with this year, all the way on up to 5, depending on how large the size of the event is. And I'm looking for people who've already worked with me, people who have their own skill sets for certain things, and we also have an overlap in understanding. Our arrival and departure, we like to arrive 1 to 2 days early for setup, because the setup for the wellness space is, it's involved. When I'm bringing my full setup, It's a full-size van that's packed to the brim of supplies, and that does not include things like the tent or whatever it is that we might be using. That may not necessarily include things like tables and chairs, right? These are the minimal supports. Our setup. We set up the wellness. When we arrive on a site, we set up our wellness collective camp, which is where our team stays, where we have our home base, and then we begin to work on setting up the base infrastructure of the community wellness space, and start to map out the zones of usage. So we work with zones and stations, right? Our ideal space is like a 10 by 20 plus 1 to 2 pop-ups, and currently we don't have those tents, so hopefully that will be changing in the near future. And as of right now, that's not a thing that we have those resources for anymore. As far as the zones go, we organize our space given based on what it is that we're assigned to as far as the space goes. These different zones over the years we've learned gives us an environment that people can feel safe and welcome and invited to lean in and support their own humanity, their human and divine aspects. And not all these zones are necessarily at every event, and sometimes they're combined. And this is kind of just a brief rundown. So we'll have a semi-public treatment zone. This is generally where the self-care station itself is. So self-care station is a table that's divided down the middle, and it has a modern medicine side. So that's where you're going to find your sunscreens, you're going to find your triple antibiotic ointment, you're going to find your band-aids, you're going to find the things that you would find in a normal first aid station. And on the other side, there'll be the holistic mojicins. And so that's tinctures, that's, GI elixir, that's itch wash, that's herbal bug repellent, that's nerves ease. There's a number of different things that we bring that over the course of the event gets put out the more we see the community needing those things, right? And we teach an empowerment of how to use and support these things, and then invite the people that we teach and show to share that with others. And so by the end of the event, oftentimes people are coming through and learning how to take care of themselves versus relying on someone else. If necessary, we'll have a poison ivy wash station. We always end up having a community wellness chill zone. And this can also double as a waiting room if there is like a backup of things, of people who have things going on and they don't quite know what to do to help support themselves. We have a deep conversation zone. This is where we will, this is part of where we'll have like a staff space. So when we're at an event, we often provide a bit of a space for the staff for the event to come sit down, take a load off, have a chill, be off for a moment, right? That's also our off space as well. And then we also have a very quiet private treatment zone where there's a cot and buckets and tissues and all of those things for if someone is vomiting or contagious or really really under the weather and they're not quite at a place where they need to leave the event and they need to lie down for a little bit. We make a kitchen and a medicine prep space. It's really helpful if we're near a place where there's water and we have those different amenities in places so that we can process medicines that are on site. We can do wound washing. We can wash the bowls and things that we're using to take care of someone's bloody wound or whatnot. We make a wash station that is for others to be able to use, whether that's washing their wounds or being able to wash their hands. And then we also have this sort of, actually I combined them. So we have a deep conversation zone, and then we also have a team, crew, staff out of sight and out of the normal space to sit and just be and to be off. A quick rundown of some of the stations. I'm not going to talk about all the things that are in each station. I will let you come back and refer to this introductory letter. Some of the stations are a hydration station. Right? We bring igloos with water and nature aid. For those of you who've encountered nature aid, or for those of you who haven't encountered nature aid, it's water, minerals, salts, sours, sugars, and herbs. So it helps the body to not get dehydrated and to come up from dehydration if it has encountered being dehydrated. We set up our stations of self-care, empowered self-care and first aid station, and I described that a little bit earlier. That's also the place where overnight we would put a walkie-talkie. So we bring a set of walkie-talkies that we use amongst our crew. Bofangs, for those that know that, which means that depending on what your radios are, we could program the frequencies of our radios to tune into yours so that you don't have to supply us with radios. That's just also on that empowered self-care station where we would put a walkie-talkie for and with instructions for overnight use for if someone comes into the station and really needs help. That way they can have immediate access to whoever is on call. Generally, that's me. We set up a private workspace station for advanced medicines. That's where I put all the ammo boxes with all the stuff that I work with. I don't necessarily leave that out for general use because not everybody knows how to use herbal medicines. And while herbal medicines are generally safe, they are medicines. They have a deep layer of impact, and there are some that are drop dosage only. There are some that do not work well in combination. There are some that do not work well depending on what someone's taking as far as modern medicines go. So unless someone is trained to work with the medicines that I make, they don't have access to them unless I'm putting them out there for people. And that's just a way to help keep everybody safe as well. That's also where I put equipments and my quick run trauma bags and wound kits. Like there's an example of a little one over there. And so it's easy to grab them and go and tend someone on the run. We make up a station where it's a quiet, private, dark rest space. We have the wash station. We also have a releasing shrine or releasing station. And so that's an energetic magical space where it is about sitting down, kneeling down on the ground, and interacting with the waters that are there, the altar items that are there. We choose water that is from the land, and when the event is finished, we return that water to the land. So it's allowed to move and rush clear. And we invite people to bring their fears and their tears, and bring them into this space and release them into this bowl of water and allow them to slip away. We create a grounding station. That's a quiet space to sit and be with a bunch of different pieces and aspects that help to bring in that kind of grounding. So different incenses, different tinctures, cozy blankets, hand fidgety things, grounding stones, coloring books, those sorts of things. And then we have an inner cartography station. And that's where we get to have a deeper sense of what's involved when we're traversing our own emotional bridges and trying to map our inner lemniscates and our human work that's involved. Yeah. This is a list of some of the aspects that can show up in a community wellness space. A grounded healing environment. Use and education of using language of compassion and language of relating with ourselves and with each other. Interactive emotional releasing shrine, contemplations and deep pontifications, hydrating one's physical body with water, minerals, and herb allies, herbal, modern, and physical, mental, emotional supports, announcements around awareness and considerations for safety, one-on-one real talk sessions, one-on-one inner cartography sessions, group inner cartography sessions, staff inner cartography sessions, utilizing and discussions around the 12 principles of permaculture as it applies to community wellness, core staff support, specifically supporting those who are staffing and working the event, education via laminated teaching boards, touchstones for the community. And these are some of the additional supports that we can offer when they're requested. Incident command structure, that would be in case of an event-wide emergency. This particular service relies entirely upon clear communication beforehand with teams and attendees. Radio protocol training on site takes about 15-30 minutes, and that's involving methods to efficiently use the walkie-talkies to communicate effectively, quickly, and professionally. Staff and event mediation, and that can be for communication breakdowns. Touchstones. Touchstones is a system and a protocol and a practice for helping to create safety. sovereign awareness for from everyone. Thank you, Jay. Wow. And to be able to have a response for incidences that are involving participants and or staff at events. And so Touchstones is its own thing. It is a newly emerging system. It started out back about 5-6 years ago and is slowly being built out. And if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you're welcome to ask. We can also offer workshops, plant-based workshops, herbal medicine making, plant walks, creating sanctuary space, inner cartography, trance dance workshops. There's a number of different workshops that are available if you'd like them. And then also safety, education, and support protocols. All right, and I think I'm going to wrap it up there. There's a whole nother section on what the exchange is involved with the community wellness, and that does tend to be something that is event by event specific. What I will share is that there is a lot that goes into this process. So this is not something that we can necessarily generally do for absolutely no exchange whatsoever. It doesn't really work that way. We won't have enough supplies to be able to maintain that. So what I invite is those who feel intrigued by this, especially those who are event leaders and facilitators, if this is something that feels up your alley, I invite you to read the document that's associated, that's kind of part of the backbone of this video. Take a look at the exchanges that are listed, and yeah, send us a proposal. Give us a sense of where you are. We want a win-win-win. We want a win for you, a win for us, and a win for the event and the experience and the community. Right? We're not in it looking for the bang for the buck. We're in it looking to be sustainable. So I look forward to deep conversations, and I look forward to playing with those that want to play this summer. And until soon, beautifuls. Lots of love.